Yeah, I don't understand the 47, you know.
And
Definitely think the 41 and the 20,000 should have been swapped. If you were gonna drop one out, it would have been the 20,000, you know, it would have been the part-time position. You gotta have a full-time permit tech. You gotta have a full-time administrator. So if you're gonna drop anything, it would be that part-time job. So whatever, I don't know what she
Well, while we're,
mistook which one she was dropping, but definitely it's a 20,000.
while we're discussing this, isn't this a good time to discuss what this budget would look like if we brought a building inspector in? And do we have a contract going with Kellogg to use theirs, and how long is that contract? And
It's my understanding that the agreement we have with Kellogg is for them to provide those services but it's not annual, it's every 2 years, but it's basically automatically renewable unless either side decides to change it or amend it or.
is there anything that keep us from?
There's always I think it might be a 60-day get out clause, the noticing and requirement to, and you'd want some transition time because there's a fair amount of work the building inspector is working on currently and inspections he's already done and who would pick up those inspections. And so there's a definite, process for that transition. It's a difficult one, but, so that would be the scenario would be to look at that contract and decide when it would be advantageous to switch that. And certainly that would change the dynamics of where those building permit fees go.
Well, right now we're spending 90,000, I think, on outside building. It seems to me we could probably hire a building inspector for less than 90, and the rest of that revenue could be offsetting some of the costs of this department.
yes, that's what we were thinking.
But you didn't put that in, or is that something you considered?
That's something we've considered, but, we would have to find a building inspector and we would have to fund it without, cause that's the problem that I was thinking about, cause we're gonna have to fund it. I don't know how we would fund it without, I don't know
Currently,
if
there's
we
a
can bring the
different-
90 in.
There's
right
a different
now.
department for the fund and maybe you can,
Yeah.
the building permit fees come in to a particular fund. It's not the 21 fund. And then those fees are the ones that are used to pay out on that contract. And then the 15% that we keep just goes into the general fund, is my understanding of.
Goes in the county general.
County general fund. So out of that contract with Kellogg, there's an 85-15 split on the building permit fees. And then there's a different split on the plan review fees. They get 100% of that. And then, so out of that split, we keep some of that. So that's under a different department. I think it's 118 is the building department. So if we're going to create an employee, then that would be a budget for that department 18. And it would be an employee in that department, and that's where you'd fund the salary position and all the benefits and all the other categories under that.
So really,
department. It wouldn't be an employee of P&Z.
in budget wise, we can do that because we can use that revenue. It's gonna be, instead of being, it could be revenue and we can use it as revenue here. And it's not gonna be an expense like it has been. So it wouldn't raise taxes because it's actually, it's projected revenue.
It's
Correct.
projected revenue.
Correct.
So I think we
It
can.
would
do that.
lower taxes.
What would a building,
Right here is
what would, a
481.
building inspector start out at? What would you?
Mhm.
I would, certainly it's another professional position that requires experience and certifications. And so I would be looking at that 55,000+ a year. And that's probably very low end on that. So you could easily spend 60 to 70 grand on somebody with experience. Somebody without experience, you can certainly go less.
They're talking about a
and
building
try to grow.
inspector,
Yeah.
Right.
55 a year.
At least would be where I'd even consider starting. I mean, again, you're not gonna find that experience that wants to come work here, not for a low dollar. If they have that experience, they're gonna work in Kootenai, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, somewhere else.
No, we can set that, if we. So are we paying out 80,000? Did we have that
90.
figure?
90.
we're paying out 90. And, well, I think that's doable. If we had 90, we would be able to pay, if we, let's just say we started out at 50, we would be able to pay, the permit tech and the,
At 22, we only had 50,000 budgeted and we spent 107,329.
per building.
okay,
Building
So-
code expense.
It's not just the 90, it's the 15% that we keep too. So
Yep.
there's a total building permits has been over $100,000 for the past number of years.
Right. About 105.
Yeah. Fluctuated, but it's been over that. So, certainly revenue there's an opportunity.
Okay, so here's a one idea. What if between now and Friday, you and Dan sat down and this would just be if the three of us think this is a good idea and worked in a building inspector into this. And there is no revenue sheet for this, and I'm not sure.
It's off of our current expense.
It's off current expense
Here,
revenue.
it would have to come over to this to be in revenue.
But, I mean, bottom line for the taxpayers, if we
We'd have
kept
to-
100,000 and spent 90 on employees, we're still saving taxes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's,
We'd have to move them up here into our salary. Or if they're gonna keep it under county general. Currently, there's no salaries up there.
It would probably come into, yeah, I see that. Okay. Okay, let's.
I'm just
I will
thinking
do
if we
that.
could do that by Friday,
We will.
then Friday
We
we
do it
could
by Friday?
consider,
For sure, and I would make some add-on so we can further the discussion, but the part-time position, the $20,000 for the part-time position, I would argue could be applied or assembled into the building inspector position and have the building official position be also the code enforcement person.
Now, as a,
And now where that 20,000 basically would go
towards,
either away or to that position to help fund
Or we
that
could-
position for that.
Would it seem more proper to put it in the planning and zoning area or keep it in the?
This is the first time we've ever considered seriously having our own building official, so I don't know if it would be a P and Z employee or if it would be a building department employee. We've always run it as as an administrator. I'm technically over the contracted building inspector. Of course, we've always treated as a symbiotic, thing, but he has his duties and authority, and I have mine. But because it's always been a subcontract, I don't know if it would fall under as another line item here as another employee under P and Z, or would it be a separate department? I think it could be either.
You'd
And-
be
and-
working a
and-
lot with your department.
Well, yeah,
So
yeah,
I
so
would
it's kind of a
take
hierarchy
that
of
part-time
authority.
out.
I think, at one time Kootenai was the departments, building and planning and zoning were completely separate, run by separate directors and had all their own employees. We all worked in the same office, but they were separate. Later, they merged them and today it's merged.
okay.
And so the planning administrator is the overall administrator of building and planning employees. So the
And-
building inspectors are just one of the employees.
And one of the other things, that the ideas that the public has shared with it, that, maybe the building inspector can also do code enforcement.
And that's part of that, was part of that discussion, that there's a way to utilize that.
Yep.
Because not only does that code enforcement, it fits in the wheelhouse of what that person's doing anyway.
Mm-hmm.
They're already a regulator, they're already an inspector, they're already gathering evidence, they're already doing those things.
I think
To
we
throw them
also-
as part of their duties would certainly,
I think we should
Be part of it.
consider, I don't know what the impact would be, but what's the impact on Kellogg if we back out of that plan?
And what's gonna happen to us if we backed out of the plan? Will they no longer service us for building inspector for the rest of, we've got to really look at that too.
I think we have to have a discussion with Kellogg about, I mean, it'd be great if we could figure it out where they could cover for each other or whatever, but
And then how long is it gonna take us to find that person?
yes.
Dan said
And
that.
how many months would Kellogg need to adjust so that this doesn't just destroy their budget or something too. I think, so there's a lot to be discussed, but I think it would be interesting to propose a budget that solved, because now we're bringing in some income to offset this growth in the P and Z department, which is going to save the taxpayers.
Yeah.
So that would be my primary focus on it, is if we could retain that $100,000 in fees, we could pay for a couple of people to get the work done.
What's your thoughts, Dan?
Agreed. No, and that's what's been discussed for sure. I think there's a way to balance that.
We discussed that earlier, that we could do that. Yeah.
So, I would be in favor of tabling it until Friday, giving you guys a chance. And then I don't know the appropriate way to reach out to Kellogg on that, but if one of you guys wants to do that, you can. If not, I can reach out to Mac and talk to him, but it'd be better coming from.
They have a group of city council and that's their building group. I'll get with Keith and find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Set up a meeting with that. They have a 2 or 3 4 person board committee group that helps make decisions for that.
And if we can come up with a win-win that doesn't destroy their current program, that would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be nice to retain those funds and bolster our own, because I think that would be a great way to finally get that third person.
Yeah, it would be a great way, well, because we would eliminate the 20,000 because they could be the code enforcer. So
Right.
we're only looking at 2 positions, which, you know, we
So we'd still have 3 positions, but one of them would be a building inspector / code.
Yep.
And so, but now we'd have funds coming in.
Funds to
if that
pay
makes-
for a
that
complete-
makes sense from an accounting.
Yeah.
Plan Tech One.
For sure.
But, yeah, and I think rather it be in county general, I think it would fall under the having a zoning, keep it all together.
Yeah, I would agree.
Easier tracking, but
Makes sense.
Yep.
All right, I would entertain a motion that we table until Friday and give these guys a chance to work up a modified version.
Before, was there other parts of the budget we needed question and answer? Do you want
Yeah,
to do
I
that
just
now or do you
wanted-
want to do that?
No, we'll do that in a second. I just want to, I just want to table the discussion
Okay.
on salary with the idea that we're going to come back to it Friday. And if that makes sense. Then we can still go through the rest of the budget, so
Okay, so we'll, I'll motion to move that we table the
salary
the
portion.
salary portion until Friday to reach out to Kellogg and figure out the building inspector and how that's all gonna work out.
I'll second.
And then maybe come back with a change.
Come back with a change.
Budget.
Okay.
Okay, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Bye.
all right, so that's all, that postpones that while we work on a solution. I don't know if there's anything in benefits anybody wants to discuss.
There's changes as you change the dollar amount.
Right, this budget doesn't show it very well, but the cost of living, I mean, we're creating new positions, things. I don't know how a cost of living thing would impact this anyway, but we're currently talking about 1% for a cost of living.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that would matter if our current employee switched to this administrative. You know, that would be more than the 1% anyway, so.
Well, these original proposals were based on the 5% that was put out
Yeah.
at the beginning of the budget.
Yeah, and we don't think we're gonna be able to do that yet, so.
Okay.
The only thing that might change that I can see in benefits, if you go down to the VIBA payment, the budget officer had recommended 1,500 because she had put down 1.5 people. I think we would wanna, in your proposal, you'd probably wanna put that back at 3.
Yep.
So that we were looking at a 3-person department. That's the one thing that I could catch. I did have a question on workman's comp. How that would go from $137 to $9,000 in 1 year.
I think, we're gonna have to ask Tammy about that, but I believe that the, I think, yeah, I'll have to ask
Was
Tammy
it the
about
code she had you on?
She had
Under
It
the
wouldn't jump
rating?
that, high. It wouldn't jump that high.
that. So we probably have to ask Tammy Shield, I think, would, we can do that.
And
Yeah.
But even the
Is it the
department
square
request was for
proportion?
9,000, so I assume that Dan might know something about it.
so my original workup for the 3 positions was only $1,300 for the original proposal cause I got it in here as inspectors.
Mhm.
That's one of the highest underneath police and roads
Okay,
because you're out in the field. So we've always budgeted that workman's comp under that number. I think originally there was some, in the calculations here on I found a mistake in it. Or it was calculating it was missing a 0 or something, and so it was calculating way too much.
okay.
So that might be where that's coming from. because
Okay.
There's something in there, cause
Yeah.
my
that's bizarre.
workup sheet here had a salary of 2 people under the inspectors at $75,000 total, and that workman's comp fee was $1,248, with one person being at clerical, which was the lower one, and that insurance was $79 a year. So for a total of $1,251 with there's a kind of experience modification or whatever that. So the total was only $1,251 for the 3 positions. The inspector position would be 2 positions that would be out in the field and one, so it would be very similar to that. So that should be 1,200, not 9,000.
Why do you? Yeah, but the 9,000 says that came from the department, so that wasn't your request?
No, never.
Okay, that's a little odd, but,
Mhm.
are we okay with moving workman's comp to 1,250 or 1,300? Just
Yeah.
Or at least clarifying
Yeah.
that.
I'll clarify
Clarifying
with
that
Tammy
that's what it
Shield.
is.
I don't think it could have went up that far, but
Okay.
let me clarify that. I can do it right now if you want, just so we
just so we can move on
Move on
and
with other
actually
buttons.
have it solved and not.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just pause for a second here while you get that. That's one last thing we have to come back to. Yeah, I like to find $9,000 mistakes because it feels like you're saving money
Mhm.
unless you find a $9,000.
That's why we all do this, for double check. That's
The
good.
other way. Yeah, I just couldn't imagine anything that would make it go up that much.
Right, original work student, Bill. $22 was $500. 3 is only 137. I'm guessing it's because it was two clericals, I would presume. Why in 23 it was 137, but.
You still moving the fuel? You guys filling up at the district?
Mhm.
At the end of the year, the fuel used to get moved.
Right, was the end of the year general voucher for the total fuel for both disaster services and for P&Z.
Okay. That's still a process that didn't get overlooked. They
Yeah.
still,
No,
because you send the request up, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
we get when we know we're not gonna fill up anymore for the year.
Yeah.
We get the totals out of Public Works and then we can do the general voucher to move the funds over.
Yeah, there was no, that she didn't think they were gonna jump like that, so I think it's an error. We'll double check with Tammy, but I believe it's an error, because that sheet's usually right. It tells you the percentage that you take off of.
Yeah, it's never, I mean, it's just not even never anywhere close to that number, so I'm not sure how that got plugged, you know. I'm not sure what drives that number on this report.
And professional services, what we're planning on doing with professional services is, you know, that's HMH, and then also, using Dan as a cheaper professional service if we really don't need an engineer. Instead of paying the engineer.
A less costly,
Less
not cheap,
Not cheap.
As a
less
county,
costly.
as a county employee.
and efficient,
It would be a
Contract.
under a contract, kind of a contract.
because he won't be in
And
it.
I think what's gonna have to happen is we're gonna have to continue training. So we'll figure that out, but that's what the budget is budgeted for. And then using HMH as well, so, and since Dan's been here, we haven't used H&H and
Not for any additional fees other than the previously approved fees for the, non-overlay district review and work we're doing with P and Z. So we
Yep.
come and ask for that task order. So those were in addition to other fees that have been going on, but that's the only fees we've been using so far this year. Yeah, the rationale there was difficult to come up with. We recognized as part of our ongoing exploring with Public Works on the unifying who we're using for professional services and coming up with those set rosters of people. We had that program going to analyze how we would be using those professional services. Certainly how they were used last year was vastly different than they would be used this coming year and in the near future, in that those fees were not set up to be recouped by permit fees that come in. And so that will be changed in our fee schedule, and so that applicants will be paying their share of those reviews by the professional services. So there's a $300 fee or a $1,000 fee to have HMH or me or anybody else for that matter, you know, review something for us, for the county. That will be explicit in the permitting process that applicant is going to be subject to those costs. So that $27,000 was thrown in there, or decided to be put in there last year as a placeholder for those fees. We've certainly run up against spending those fees, and for those reasons, we don't need to spend them for that anymore, and we didn't anticipate having to do that. So many of those things that they reviewed, they wouldn't need to review this coming year. Doesn't mean we wouldn't need them for other things, but there would be a process for that. And then now we have some options for how we're going to better utilize those funds. We also thought we added $9,000 to that number just as a number that seemed reasonable. You don't know what specifically you're going to use it for. We've talked about the need for legal counsel from time to time. Certainly have our own prosecution team that helps us out as much as possible, and we utilize that as much as we can. You may get into situations where you need some outside counsel to give some input, or as we do code rewrites and we do code revisions and stuff like that, having some outside professional services, be it an HMH type or be it an attorney that can look at it from a land use perspective. We wanted some opportunity to have money for that, to utilize that in anticipation of, we've got this MOD coming, we've got new building code coming. We're about 3/4 of the way through a significant revision to the zoning code. That got put on hold a year and a half ago, and that drastically still needs to be done. And then I don't anticipate a grant or anybody that will help pay for that. So there's going to be some need to utilize some professional services to get those things done. And so we do have some anticipation of spending some of that professional services this year. Crystal ball is we don't know specifically how much, but we certainly think a lion's share of what was spent last year will be recouped by application this coming year. So we're hoping that money there is for the professional services we get for the outside consultants.
On the copier rentals, it's just been way off on the budget amount.
So I had side marked on ours, and that, yeah, that wasn't what we, it was like, well, obviously if we're planning to purchase
Yeah,
a copier and
Yes.
then we're gonna have to have that block amount, in the budget for that. So in my proposal, I think we had in there the $4,500 or the, whatever the anticipated was for the copier. And then that was.
Yeah, it's at the end, the capital expenditures, looks like it's.
So
So
wouldn't
you
the
still have a
rental go
contract
away?
on your.
so instead of rental, it needs to be copier maintenance and supplies.
Okay.
We'll just have her rename
And
that.
is that still anticipated to be $750 a year? That was part of the program was, I don't, it was original purchase, but then what was the maintenance cost on top of
Yeah,
that?
she never got with me, so I have a note to discuss those
Okay.
with her, cause it's on every one of them. I have a question. Plus, when does the lease end for each of the, I think January, quite a few of them come up.
Okay.
Ours
So-
was like September, it was coming up sooner.
Okay,
It always fell on that right before budget.
all right.
I'm renewing the lease.
Yeah, we're trying to work it so that we're not paying the amount of a purchase every year,
Oh, for
just for
sure.
rental.
So this one will actually be a purchase for sure this year.
Pretty positive, yes.
I believe that was the case because our lease is coming due at the end of September.
Okay,
Postage to me looks like we should raise it a little. They're already at 100%. We know postage has gone up. We've raised everybody else's postage. Any thought on that? You're already at 100% of budget and here we are budgeting the very same amount again.
I think that's, we can look at it. When we have the budget, that's a journal voucher from the budget into the postage machine. And so the money goes in there and then it keeps coming out as we use it. And so the downstairs, there's a budget, there's a balance left of what we've
Yeah.
got in there. So we put the money in the postage that shows
So
100%
he-
spent.
yeah, they take their
We haven't
100%
spent all of it.
that they pay in postage. It's already spent and
And
he won't be
so-
spending any more
Yeah.
throughout the year.
Correct. Any more than that, because we're under that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it rolls over. Also, we increased that. You look in years past, it was always $200 or something like that. Most all of the postage we do is for public noticing and legal noticing. And so those mailing costs are recouped through the applications by the applicant. So we always get paid back for those. But often we have to send out 50 mailings and then so all of a sudden there's a $50 charge on there and it doesn't show the income. And it was always showing us over budget, the $200. We put $200 in there because every periodically we do have to notice up a workshop or notice up something that is a county legal notice of something that there is no application to pay for. So we have to send out code violation notices and different letters to people, and we do have to send stuff to people. So we have a $200-ish budget that we typically spend. But yeah, that $1,500 is the number that we put in there all at once, and then it rolls over. I'd say it was because of the amount was being spent, we're spending $1,200 on postage and it was looking like we were $1,000 over budget.
You feel the thousands adequate for the training if you have 3 employees versus what 15 you had last year?
I don't have any specific classes or knowledge of what we would send people to know that we had, 3 classes to go to that are going to be $300 each. It's a number so that we have money to send somebody to a class or a conference if that's going to benefit their position. Knowing we had new employees, knowing we're going to have some potential for floodplain classes and particularly seat classes for the site disturbance and stormwater and erosion control training. Those classes are $200 and $300 to go through. And so certainly.
Are they up here mostly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
webinars, or then every once in a while there's conferences and stuff that you want to, as a professional conference or something, you try to go to, but.
Okay. Okay.
On the next page, the new development for DP, data processing, the budget officer dropped it to 500, but every other department's been considerably more than that. I can see it probably because it only used 13%, but we've been planning for a lot more data processing new development on every other budget. I'm just wondering why this one,
Well, in this case, for sure, we left it at the 1,200 because you never know when you need another computer, basically.
Well,
We've got plenty of furniture and whatnot, but if we get a third employee,
You're gonna have to,
we're
yeah.
gonna have some considerations there for sure. Cause we're gonna
probably,
arguably need
you're
a
right,
whole nother
probably need to
computer
leave it at
set
that.
and desk and.
I'd recommend we put data processing back to 1,200.
I would too.
Yeah,
I would agree, especially if we're looking at the building code or.
Would you make a note?
There'll be some
Yeah.
considerable costs for that, but
Yeah.
there'll be initial setup costs.
Mhm.
Namely, go back to vehicles, cause there'd be we can have that discussion.
Okay.
Do we already have enough desks and that for 3 people in that office?
Find a desk or.
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm sure we
I
can
think
find.
I'm just thinking that the $200 with somebody new coming in, same thing we did with ours, that we might need to increase it a little to cover the office setup for a third person. I don't know. I don't think $200 would outfit a third person.
And what would you think about a third person? What would you
Hmm.
request?
I guess I would argue, wait and determine if you're gonna put a third person in and then increase the budget for that too, because you're gonna be increasing the budget for all the other things.
Okay.
The benefits as well as the vehicle. So I guess if we decide there's gonna be a third person, then yeah, you probably should up that to
Okay.
$500, $600,
Yeah, we
something
can do
enough
that.
to buy
I'll go ahead and do that.
a desk and a chair and
Okay, keep it in mind when you do
Yeah.
your proposal. Capital outlay, I'm just confused. Some places we have seen $6,000 or $7,000 set aside for new copiers. And some places we see here $3,000 recommended by the budget officer. Does anybody know what a new copier costs?
it depends, like the road department has a way different copier than one of the smaller departments, like say us out here, we just have black and white and
Mm-hmm.
simple.
yeah, there's
There
definitely a
is a quite a.
good,
cost.
better, best copier. And so they're different. They have
And
different
Dan
features.
has copier.
We have an 11x17 color copier, so it's.
So we
that's why
think
it's in-
3,000.
It's in the middle, and I think the 45 was, didn't go, I don't know if we finalized the negotiation on what those are, but
No, I have not seen those final figures, but
Okay,
Probably put it back to 45.
I would say,
Then
capital outlay 45? Yeah, I mean, I don't want our plan to buy copiers to fail for lack of budget, since
Yeah.
we're gonna save money. The only other thing I would comment on is if you look at benefits, they're all over the place. Retirement. The department had recommended going from 8,000 to 64,000. The budget officer actually dropped it from this year's.
I think she dropped it because,
so I can
Dan's,
explain some of that.
because Dan's,
So in all the years past, I don't utilize the county health benefits because I get my benefits through my wife. That saves the county some $20,000 a year. I put in, or whoever's gonna be the admin is probably gonna want the benefits. And so the budget's increasing this year because we never budgeted for it in case I needed it. We didn't budget for it because I wasn't using it. So
I see.
we anticipated that there would be 3 people trying to utilize budgets. And so that's why that number is significantly higher for all these benefit costs, because those 3 people are gonna cost more.
Mhm.
But I doubt if retirement would change as much as that. Medical insurance, definitely.
Well, it's just a function of the salary, unless there's a,
Well, I'm just wondering why the budget officer dropped it back to
there
8,000.
must have been a snafu in the number then.
That's what
I mean,
And of course, Friday, we're getting some new numbers with the 1% figured in and all that. So I think we're gonna need to pay attention to the retirement and medical insurance lines, just to make sure that they match the number of people that we decide.
I mean, these department request numbers weren't numbers that
Kind of like the workman's comp jumping
Mhm.
thousands of dollars. I just think we'll need to pay attention to that.
I agree.
Yeah,
And if you
this
look at the
is-
benefits, I mean, they're going from 33 to 156
was insurance.
on the one projection, 33 to 69 on the budget officer's projection. So there's a huge disparity. We just need to watch out.
So
That's
the retirement was
14.
14,000, not 64.
Yeah.
I mean, it was 64 for insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that number's in the wrong spot.
That's what I'm thinking
Yeah.
too,
I didn't see
because it
it.
looks like it's the exact same
It is
number.
the exact same, so.
So I think retirement is. But she's
Yeah.
already corrected it to
But if
8,
you move
so,
it back to 8208, that's,
which is lower than,
if you have the 3
Previous.
employees, you're gonna be at 14.
Yep.
You're really gonna, once you nail the salaries is when you can recalculate the benefits.
right,
And know what those specific numbers are gonna be.
All right.
which we will look at Friday.
And you have the capability of making another one of these?
Sure.
Okay, so if you could, why don't you make one for when we figure out what the, building inspector would be.
Okay.
And then we'll,
With 2 positions.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or thoughts or ideas on this budget before I open it up for public comment?
nope.
Tracy?
No.
Matt?
Like your,
100.
Dan, I'm glad you got the salary for the planning tech. The part-time worker for the county has to cost us money, because once you go part-time, benefits stay the same. County burden is about 50 to 60 cents on every dollar we pay on wages. And when you go part-time, it's dollar for dollar. So part-time doesn't save us money. Dan, and I'm glad you got the retirement, state unemployment, your fuel line. 0472. It's gonna be all based on if you do hire a building inspector. I mean, this is all stuff that is gonna change. You know, vehicle maintenance, vehicle expense, all that's gonna change. I have one question. The copy rental, we don't know when that ends.
He said September.
Pretty confident our lease ends in September.
So, and we're buying them, so this $1,800 should come out $1,850.
I think it's gonna need to be, unless
We're gonna change that line item to copier maintenance and supplies
Okay,
for maintenance and owners and
but 1,850 is still pretty high.
well,
I
for,
agree.
for the maintenance fee, the capital outlay for the purchase is over here.
Yeah,
Right.
And so, yeah, that 1850
yeah,
is way too high.
I've got notes to look at all of those for each department.
My last comment is, because this is pretty well an unknown budget on what you're gonna do, is to come in high, because you can always change it even after it's posting, as long as you go down.
That's right.
Until the middle of September, you can, oh, well, the first or second week of September. You can always go down on it.
and off of what Matt said, I think, we have, if we're gonna propose a building inspector, then we probably have to propose another vehicle. So there are some, there are some other costs that you're gonna have to think about that eat away at that 90,000 pretty quick, but we do need to make sure we don't hire a building inspector and not give him a vehicle to inspect with, or, the last time I was commissioner, I recall at least one time we had to repair or replace the building inspector's vehicle for bullet holes. So,
I say one more thing.
go ahead.
It's not just 90,000. If you take the tech, which is already in the budget, I believe, now you're up to 110,000.
Well, and the 15% of the building permit fees that we keep.
Yeah,
So there's
I'm just thinking total
there's another
expenses.
15, 20,000.
If we make it wash in salaries, we still have trucks and other things to buy
There'll be some initial cash outlay that.
we have to think about.
And we can probably, looking at the trucks, I know you guys got a new vehicle. And that's the thing, we can switch that over if somebody else is driving, and we could use a sheriff's vehicle for the meantime. I mean, we don't have to have brand new everything.
Right. And we could leave the lights on it for Dan.
Yeah, we could.
Maybe he'd stay. Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for P and Z? Otherwise, we have many budgets to consider. Do you have any questions for us?
Just we wanna try to, I don't know how soon we could set a meeting with anybody from Kellogg. Do we need an answer on that before Friday, or do we just wanna
Yeah.
come up with a budgeted idea and then we can, you all decide on that? And then we continue the discussion, and
I think I'd want to hear from Kellogg before we
I just don't know if we can set up something between now and
sabotage
Friday.
ourselves. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
I realize it might just have to be a phone call to talk about impact and I don't know, because there's this weird transition period that we don't want to. So I don't want to cut off our nose to spite our face.
For sure.
And if it's something, it's gonna be quite a transition, can we make the goal for start of next year? The hard part of finding
I can find out
a
who,
qualified,
who specifically we talk to and approach the subject and probably set up a phone call.
Yeah, I've been
You and that.
I've been looking at this for quite a while, and I do have somebody that's a possible fit for this. It would take some work to look at it, you know, he'd have to be approved, and we'd probably have to set it out, but, I was approached before, so I think finding somebody may not be too hard.
okay,
No, I think that the challenge is getting the Kellogg part figured out. Because
Okay.
ultimately, it'd be nice if these programs could work cooperatively with each other, so we don't want to sabotage their program, but.
Okay.
All right,
I will set up a meeting with, that group or that,
Okay.
the head of that group or whoever it needs to be with you specifically, and then we'll hopefully have some answers by Friday.
Okay.
I'll redo the worksheets for the new positions.
Okay.
And then.
Okay.
Is there a time on Friday? Or is there just a
By
general-
11?
General meeting?
well,
11's
we're
when our
starting
meeting
at
is, right?
11.
We're starting at 11, so before 11.
Okay.
10:30.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
How's the board doing? Do we need a recess or are we good to go?
All right. A while.
Because if we're gonna switch budgets, then I need to figure out who we're up to, and then I need to go get some people, but is there anything left in here besides the assessor, which we said we'd wait till we got to appraiser? I would covered all of the current expense, except for the
It was motor vehicle. I think.
motor vehicle.
It was motor
Oh.
vehicle.
We're waiting until we do appraisal to get the
Yeah,
assessor back in. Thank you, Dan.
All right, thanks, Dan.
All right, so then numerically, would that not make it road and bridge?
Yep.
All right, then I would, motion for a 5-minute recess so I can go get
Okay.
Public Works.
Okay.
Anybody want to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Aye.
so we'll recess for 5 minutes for whatever personal reasons you may have. I will go get